Stock market likes Trump. Trump as feds take over DC policing. Tariffs still in the headlines. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America, with my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business. Hang on for a brisk ride. Stock market likes Trump. The latest Consumer Price Index, also known as CPI, report showed inflation holding steady in July, with prices up 2.7% year over year and 0.2% month over month. As economists point out, something called the core CPI, a number which excludes food and energy, was up to 3.1% annually and a big 0.3% increase in July. So energy was cheaper, but housing costs continue high for Americans. However, investors seem to key on the headline number and not the underlying core CPI number. So both the NASDAQ and the S&P index set all-time records in those markets over the last week. The jobs market is really not looking good, folks. Over the last few months, just 73,000 jobs were added in July, with unemployment rate up from 4.1% to 4.2%. I want to quickly add that I've been involved with employment numbers for a number of decades. 5% was always considered full employment. So these low unemployment numbers at 4.1, 4.2, they're irrelevant if it's lower than 5, basically. We've just gotten spoiled with the numbers the way they are. However, there are job changes coming, many of them attributed to AI. So we need to watch out for what's happening there. What we've seen in the current jobs market was 139,000 jobs for May and 147,000 jobs for July. So the 79,000 number is pretty tough. This would be a strong hint at a possible slowing economy. So why is the stock market so hot? Well, best guess is that the combined numbers above may well predict the Fed will finally lower its key rate. Powell is likely finally under enough pressure to do this. I note that some columnists disguised as Dems may proclaim this means the rich are getting richer under Trump. Well, an often overlooked statistic is that the majority of Americans are in the stock market. This is because most Americans no longer have a traditional pension plan where the plan handles the investments. The average American has savings plans, either a 401k or a 403b. That means when the market does well, they all do well. So a good market is a positive for the majority of Americans. At the same time, there are more amateur investors in the market, and they tend to scare easier than experienced investors who know the market may trend higher over time, but jolts to the market do happen with some regularity. Hang in there and enjoy the long-term ride. Most Americans should relax and not be checking their savings accounts more than once a quarter. Well, it's been all the headlines, folks. Trump has the feds take over D.C. policing, and in light of the blowback with when he sent the Fed National Guard out to Los Angeles, what else could you expect? A true headline story right now is the big meanie, that is Trump, has again sent the feds into an American city. Now it is D.C. to crush a serious crime problem. The winners are the residents of D.C. and the many, many tourists who regularly visit this fascinating capital of the United States of America. I lived near the district for 3 years and truly enjoyed it. However, crime was not nearly the problem that it was today. A true idiot, Dem Mayor Washington, Muriel Bowser, screamed about the takeover with a ridiculous claim that crime is the lowest in 3 decades. The fact is that sky-high crime rate has lowered a bit over each of the last few years, but is still at levels that put Americans' capital on par with the most dangerous cities in the world. Instead of accepting the gift and making the most of it, she is crying. Reports are that D.C. police and former police love the additional help. The numbers vary, but I've heard 800 National Guard and perhaps as many as 500 FBI agents to help investigate and quell the violence and high levels of car theft. Focus will be on arresting criminals and preventing homeless encampments on these highly visible areas. Hey, while I'm on this topic, what is happening in America? For DC in 2024, 187 homicides were reported. Now, this is down from 274 in 2023. This is still a ridiculous number for a population of 700,000. Let's look at some other major cities, which incidentally all controlled by Denmark. In 2024, there were 382 homicides and manslaughter incidents. I do visit there due to family, and each time I leave, I express joy that I made it through there again without bullet holes. Chicago in 2024, there were 573 homicides, down from 620 the previous year. I've told an academic group that I belong to that I will not attend their annual conference if they have it in Chicago, since the city is simply not safe. Baltimore, there were 201 homicides in 2024, down from 261 in 2023. As I have family in the Baltimore area, I worry about their exposure when they travel into the city from the suburbs. Detroit, 203 homicides in 2024, down from the prior year, but still crazy high for a city of that size. And how about Philadelphia, the city of my birth? Hey, the city of brotherly love, and where I attended college. Killings in 2024 dropped from 269 from an incredible 410 the prior year. And here in Houston, Houston police reported 322 homicides in 2024, down about 9% from 354 in 2023. A key element is that these official stats on reductions in murders are being reported by those who are being paid to protect the public. Case after case has revealed that these stats are not very accurate. Further, they are starting from such high levels that the reduction means very little. Somehow, we Americans have become deconditioned to the crime around us. As I've said before, I'm a staunch supporter of the death penalty. So what's the problem? Well, we had a brutal murderer executed the other day, over 30 years after he committed multiple murders. That is just not justice, and it is not a deterrent. I call for the death penalty in virtually all murder cases, and that it be administered within 6 months maximum. Part of the path there is to replace all the so-called Soros DAs with real law enforcement professionals. No more self-recognizance for violent crimes, and no more catch and release for illegals. I applaud the federal government's approach in locking up Sean Combs both before and after his recent convictions. That should be a model, not the sole example. I believe the underlying problem is that we Americans have tolerated making victims out of criminals and the high rates of all type of crimes, that we are being desensitized to how bad it is throughout America. Time to scale it down and make America safe again, not just in D.C., but across the country. I repeat my urging that we all aim to be kind to each other every day while we get the criminals off the streets. Russia continues to murder Ukrainians. I'm a staunch anti-communist. Exhibit A of recent acts of typical communists is the invasion of Ukraine by Russia under the leadership of mass murderer Putin. Putin has continued to ignore Trump, and Russia keeps fighting its war of attrition across the eastern and southern sides of Ukraine. He is under the impression that he can keep all that land and dominate what happens in Ukraine afterwards. I call on Europe and its allies to make sure that this does not happen. While Trump is meeting with Putin in Alaska, that is not the end, but simply a road marker. I believe that until Ukraine has enough offensive weapons to do significant damage to Russia's military and civilian infrastructure, it is highly unlikely that there will be an acceptable peace. Time to put up the funds and weapons to get a lasting peace. That is the only thing Putin will understand. My impression is that when the counterattack happens, once enough damage is done to Russia, most likely Putin's lieutenants will put him down like the rabid animal that he is. In the meantime, the civilized world must do everything that it can to freeze out Russia's economy, and the same for China, which is supporting Russia. Tariffs still in the headlines. Trump extended the tariff truce with the Chi-Coms for another 90 days. At this rate, there will be no deal before his term ends. They have no reason to make a deal as long as they are selling stuff to the USA. I call on all consumers to stop buying anything from China if at all possible. Sadly, that is not easy. A prime example, I was in the tourist outlet known as Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. That is in a beautiful area in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. I collect locally made ceramic mugs from places I visit. I went to about a half dozen gift shops in similar places. Tons of mugs, but almost everyone was made in China. A few were made in Thailand. None in the USA. Given what they are charging, I surely think they could have had at least one made locally. Now, tourist mugs won't impact American safety, but pharmaceuticals will. Trump introduced a new tariff on pharmaceuticals. This is not based on balance of payments, but China and even Ireland made the list. These tariffs are on a long timetable, which I believe is deliberate. I strongly support this since our security depends on it. COVID vividly demonstrated our dependence on other countries for important medications as well as computer chips. America must secure its safety through its independence. The tariff phase-in will allow these critical products to be made domestically again. Related to this, I recently heard an incredible statistic. America's military depends on as many as 2,000 parts from China. How can this have happened with the fortune we are spending on defense? Trump has reportedly ordered Secretary of Defense Hegseth to make sure that this situation is rectified and to report by this October. Given the threat to civilization that China presents, this is an unthinkable failure by the Department of Defense under both political parties. This threat is even greater than it might seem, since some of the more sophisticated parts could have spy technology built into them. I regard this as a real crisis. Anybody who thinks that Chi-Coms are not a threat to civilization should note their illegal interference with American citizens to its country. The latest report is from NTD Network, which stated that a 7-year-old boy is being prevented from leaving China since the Chi-Coms don't like what his father has said about China's leadership. Both his parents are American green card holders. Not sure what they were thinking, but apparently the father went back to China with the son and landed in prison. Then the Chi-Coms blocked the son from leaving China. Supposedly, this is a 1-year penalty. I suppose they'll try and brainwash the kid during that year. India is also in the spotlight. I thought we would have to deal on tariffs with India right after the EU deal, but not so far. This is one of the two big issues with this populous nation. The other is purchasing Russian oil, which is allowing the murderer Putin to kill more Ukrainians. Secrets to living longer. As someone who plans to live past age 100, that is playing tennis, doing webcasts, not sitting staring at a wall, I do pay attention to articles about healthy living. The NTD Network recently ran a special by Rudy Blaylock called The 5 Daily Habits That Make You Look Decades Younger According to Science. Hey, with a title like that, who could resist? Of course, the usual disclaimer is that genetics have a big part to play. However, I personally believe lifestyle is a huge part of delaying the aging process. So here are the 5. 1, prioritizing quality sleep every night. You know what? Most people have trouble sleeping. I have trouble sleeping. So let's have a suggestion we can actually use. 2, regular physical exercise. This is a biggie and one I wholeheartedly support. Get out there and walk, hit the gym, take up some active sport like tennis. 3, daily sun protection. The experts say that sun makes your skin look older. I've never been a sun bunny, but not because I'm worried about a few lines. It is because I am super sensitive and have suffered through multiple skin cancer procedures throughout my life. Take my word for it, the simple act of using sunscreen and taking some basic precautions is well worth it. Following a Mediterranean-style diet. Following a diet rich in plant-based foods with moderate healthy animal products significantly improve overall healthy aging. I do believe that diet can make a difference. Not sure what I call a diet, which is a Mediterranean diet, but I do eat lots of salads and veggies. My focus is on low saturated fat with very low sodium and low caffeine. 5, manage stress effectively. This one is almost humorous. In our violent and uncaring society with dog eat dog often the motto, I'm not sure how you can avoid stress unless you're one of those Tibetan monks who goes and lives in a mountain retreat, blocking out the rest of the world. I would certainly like this to change, maybe someday. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.